And welcome back to this President's Day special broadcast. Up next, our special review here of the presidency and the legacy of one Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a man whose impact we unknowingly feel and see every single day, at least for now, as his progressive policies are under attack as never before. Now, from our 2012 President's Day special, here's Andrew.
He was and will forever be the only man elected president of the United States 4 times. He served 12 years as president from 1933 until his death in 1945, more than any other man before or since. A New Yorker from Hyde Park in the Hudson Valley, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd president of the United States, was a political progressive, with views he described as a little left of center. He also led the nation through 2 of its greatest challenges in the 20th century or any other era, preparing and then guiding the nation into the Second World War.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
And guiding the nation through the Great Depression, an economic collapse Roosevelt had inherited from Herbert Hoover. FDR took his first oath of office in March of 1933 during the darkest portion of the Depression. At its peak, 1/4 of all Americans were out of work. Millions went hungry, millions more succumbed to the strains. And against that backdrop, Roosevelt, whose campaign had been a positive one, addressed the nation for the first time as president, sounding the alarm. And he did so with another speech that continues to resonate in our national consciousness today.
This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat into advance. In every dark hour of our national life, a leadership of frankness and of vigor has met with that understanding and support of the people themselves, which is essential to victory. And I am convinced that you will again give that support to leadership in these critical days.
Again, that was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt speaking at his first inauguration in March of 1933. Now, joining me tonight to discuss both the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt, his legacy, and the implications to our nation with Roosevelt's legacy under attack is David Woolner. He is a senior fellow and resident Hyde Park historian at the Roosevelt Institute, and historian Nick Taylor, author of the book American Made. He had an award-winning history of FDR's program to rebuild the country and put the jobless back to work during the Depression. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to focus tonight on 3 of the most significant aspects of Roosevelt's administration and legacy, what they did then and where they are now. Now, that focus includes FDR's plans for economic recovery, his creation of the safety net, and, of course, banks and Wall Street regulation. And we begin with the Great Depression and the road to recovery. Recovery, FDR's first task upon taking office. It is our first focus here. Here now, the 32nd President of the United States on economic recovery and the government's role in returning to prosperity.
Our greatest primary task is to put people to work. This is no unsolvable problem if we face it wisely and courageously. It can be accomplished in part by direct recruiting by the government itself, treating the task as we would treat the emergency of a war, but at the same time, through this employment, accomplishing greatly needed projects to stimulate and reorganize the use of our great natural resources.
And to accomplish that goal, President Roosevelt set out on an ambitious agenda with his New Deal, with programs including the National Recovery Act, the Works Progress Administration, the Public Works Administration, plus all the programs listed here and many, many others. Those programs had their intended impact on employment in 1933, FDR's first year, 24.9%. By 1941, as the U.S. entered the war, that had fallen to 9.9%, and 4 years later, the war had finished off the recovery, bringing unemployment under 2%. The New Deal also helped buoy the economy as a whole, taking the nation's gross national product from $68 to $113 billion in just 7 years. Now, flash forward to 2008 and 2009, President Barack Obama coming through the recession, asking for, on multiple occasions, similar infrastructure projects to those that had been proposed by FDR to both put Americans back to work and to benefit the nation. As you know, his efforts met with stiff objection by those who say either government help will not work or who feel it's not the government's role to do so.
What we see with their plan is a lot of spending that I just don't think will work. Government can't fix this. We can't borrow and spend our way back to prosperity.
Infrastructure enhancement in this country is a positive way to long-term improve the job prospects in America. But look, a stimulus approach has not worked.
Gentlemen, did it work in the New Deal?
Well, yes, it did. It certainly did. An indication of that is the fact that in 1937, Roosevelt was encouraged enough. Unemployment had dropped to 14%. He withdrew stimulus, dropped the budget of the WPA by 2/3, and that created the Roosevelt recession, which prolonged the Depression.
Yeah, I think it's very important to remember. You were showing clips from the first inaugural address. And, you know, the American people should remember that when Roosevelt took office, we were not just alone in this Great Depression. It was a worldwide economic crisis. And what Roosevelt was trying to do was find a solution to this crisis, because alternatives to democracy were springing up all over the world. You had the rise of fascism in Europe and communism in Soviet Russia. His goal was frankly to save capitalism and save democracy.
There was opposition to the New Deal proposals at the time. Some of them I know did not survive court challenges, but that opposition has pretty much, has it been keeping up steadily throughout the years since he proposed it right up till today?
Well, the business community has always been against any kind of government intervention into the economy, and that was true then, and it's of course true today. What happened in Roosevelt's time was that he had a solid majority in Congress, and the Congress people at the time saw the benefits of having jobs programs affecting their districts. So he had much better majorities, much better luck at passing his programs in Congress at the time than Obama has today.
Everybody, there's so much conversation today about government not being able to solve problems, government being part of the problem. Was that the thought process during FDR's administration?
Well, I think it's important to remember that when Roosevelt took office, he was essentially driving blind. We had very little government capacity at that time in 1932, 33. We had no Social Security, no national unemployment insurance. You know, we had never been through an economic crisis like this before. So he was really starting from scratch, and economic orthodoxy at the time said, well, the thing to do in a crisis like this is to cut the budget. But Roosevelt felt it was critical, again, going back to the rise of fascism and extreme ideologies in Europe and other parts of the world. He thought it was critical to get people back to work and to do it immediately, so he spent the money to do that.
You mentioned Social Security and unemployment. Up next, as our President's Day special on FDR continues, another of his legacies and another approach now under attack, America's safety net. Stay with us.